What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below, the best gaming related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. We've talked on the YouTube channel about Lost Planet. This is a title, guys, that I really enjoyed the first two games, and then when they brought out the third game, it looked like it was kind of a step in the wrong direction, at least in my personal opinion. And it reminds me a little bit of what happened with Dead Space, where Dead Space had two games that were unbelievable. The first game was transcendent, and then the second game somehow was able to top the first game, in my opinion. And then the third game was a real step in the wrong direction, where they were kind of prioritizing action over horror. And so I've seen similar things like this happen in the past. And Lost Planet, I feel, lost a little bit of its way going into Lost Planet 3. And it's hard to really tell exactly and pinpoint exactly what the issue was there, but it just wasn't as captivating as the first two titles. Well, I want to talk in this first segment of the show about Lost Planet 4. We've talked, like I said, on the YouTube channel about the continuation of this franchise in the future, and I would love to see a Lost Planet 4, especially in current days with the, obviously the updated engines and things of that nature that could really make this a graphical spectacle to behold. And I think that there was a lot more that we could have done with the story and things of that nature. And so I want to talk about what happened here with Lost Planet, and could we ever see a continuation in the future? Let's talk about it. So guys, this is an article coming to us from USAID from Gaming Bolt. Lost Planet had an interesting premise, but the franchise slowly faded into obscurity after just a handful of entries and one spin-off. Japan is home to many game development teams in the industry, and there is no shortage of iconic franchises from there that includes, but not limited to, Resident Evil and Street Fighter, among others. In addition to these well-known classics, the Japanese development studios have also actively dabbled in the middle market space with experimental IPs built on a relatively conservative budget. Some of these IPs would go on to become really big with subsequent entries, while others would fizzle out after a lukewarm critical or commercial failure. Falling into the latter category is a little franchise by the name of Lost Planet, which sought to combine third-person shooter action and mecha brawls against the backdrop of a sci-fi dystopia. Over the course of less than a handful of entries and a handheld spin-off, the franchise faded into obscurity. This begs the question, what actually happened to Lost Planet? So, first and foremost, guys, Lost Planet, it sold millions of copies. When you look at it from a sales perspective, it did sell millions of copies. Now, when you compare that to other Japanese titles that have come out, that being like Resident Evil and Street Fighter, it's not even close in terms of the numbers that are done, say, with Resident Evil or with Street Fighter versus that of Lost Planet. But that being said, Lost Planet was a bit different from other action games by Capcom, one of those being that the game was exclusive to Microsoft's Xbox 360 as opposed to most of its other titles, which found a home on Sony's PlayStation 3. The game is set against a futuristic dystopia wherein the planet Earth has become uninhabitable due to factors such as pollution, wars, and global warming, and humanity is on the lookout for alien planets to colonize and potentially inhabit. Upon stumbling on the alien planet, the expedition team comes face to face with an alien race by the name of Acrid, and you embark on a long and arduous journey to helping colonizing this hostile planet. So just the premise alone, guys, was awesome, and I really enjoyed the story. I thought, there was things that they could build upon after the third game, and overall, though, especially with the first two games, I really enjoyed it. I also felt that it'd be really interesting to see us go to a number of other different planets, really expand upon the legacy, the lore that is Lost Planet, but we never got that. Apart from the fun single-player offerings, Lost Planet has also offered a decent suite of multiplayer options as well, which mix the game's thermal energy management systems with standard game modes like CTF and free-for-all, resulting in an experience that was as addicting as it was fun. Lost Planet released in December of 2006 in Japan, followed by January of 2007 worldwide, and critics and fans unanimously praised the game on account of its fun gameplay and engaging multiplayer mode, and it stands at a respectful rating of 79 on Metacritic. As mentioned before, Lost Planet was originally on Xbox 360 exclusive, but the game would soon be ported over to PC and PlayStation a few months later in the form of Lost Planet Extreme Condition Colonies Edition, which added a few new bells and whistles to the game's multiplayer offerings. Lost Planet also enjoyed a great commercial reception, selling over 2.8 million units in lifetime sales for both versions of the game. Now, following the breakout success of the first game, the developer already began laying plans for a sequel. New plans would be added into the mix, such as fleshed out co-op mechanic for the single player campaign that would allow players to work together and share important resources like thermal energy as a team to overcome new threats. Apart from that, the game would also have a change of scenery from the first game, among a slew of other things. Lost Planet 2 finally released in 2010, although unlike its predecessor, the game was released on both Xbox 360 and PS3, which was followed by a PC release a couple months later. So you already see, guys, typically there's two things that have to really happen in order for a franchise to continue or for it to get canceled. And the first one, I mean, really the bottom line, guys, is going to be the money, right? If a game is selling lots of copies, there's a good chance that you're going to get continuations of that franchise. If you don't, then it's pretty likely that it's going to go into a separate direction. They're going to like move on from the IP. The second thing would be critic ratings. So if it gets really well received, especially that on top of having good, a good amount of copies sold, you're most likely going to have an opportunity to get a sequel made. But like I said, if you have bad critic ratings and you have bad, sales, the game is going to go into a limbo state or a state of no return. And with Lost Planet, the first game sold very well, and the second game comes out, and what I loved about these games was it was a full package. It became, from being, single player story, multiplayer modes, co-op modes, the big three when it comes to a video game that I think really brings you back to the experience over and over again. Lost Planet offered that, which I think was huge. Now, the developer also produced a handheld spin-off for the franchise in the form of EX Troopers that released for the PS3 in 2013, which added new elements such as a melee fighting system and a jetpack, among others. The game didn't have a strong critical or commercial reception, and at least the latter of these problems can partly be attributed to the game being released in Japan only. So yeah, I think they set that was doomed to fail because of it only being in Japan. For the third mainline game in the franchise, development duties shifted to Spark Unlimited. This prequel would veer away from its predecessor as it incorporated some role-playing elements into the mix, such as side quests and crafting equipment, among others. In addition to this, the game would also add an element of survival horror into its gameplay as the camera jutted really close to the protagonist's shoulder and the mission environments felt claustrophobic. Now, Lost Planet 3 finally released in 2013 for all major platforms, but failed to really impress critics once again. The new direction for the series was criticized by players as it made for a repetitive gameplay experience that goes on for way longer than it needs to, and the gameplay mechanics didn't boast much depth either. Between having the series' lowest Metacritic score of 61 and the game being developed by an external studio not previously involved with the franchise, Lost Planet 3 flopped on a commercial level as well. Unsurprisingly, there's little to no information available with regards to its sales figures, which usually tells us, guys, it didn't sell very good. So number one, didn't do great. It wasn't a terrible Metacritic score, but it wasn't great either. And then on top of that, you're not even going to release the sales numbers. Most likely it was a real bomb when it came to the sales for this title. So with 3 commercial failures to weigh against one breakout success, this developer naturally put the series on indefinite hold after Lost Planet 3. Rumors of a franchise revival started doing the rounds as the developer had allegedly pitched a potential Lost Planet 4, but the management refused since the investment needed for the project would be too risky for a niche franchise. Jump to the current day, and it seems highly unlikely that Lost Planet would be resurrected once again, and that's a shame because these games could end up being a lot of fun when they were firing on all cylinders. And I totally agree with this. I mean, I think that Lost Planet had a lot of really great things to build off of. But once again, when you go away from one studio to another, there's a big risk there, first and foremost. But secondly, when you made the handheld game that of course was just in Japan, that was, just not a good move. That did not help the franchise whatsoever. I think they were building on something though after that first game, and then when you got to the second one, it felt like they were starting to build some momentum. It reminded me a lot of Gears of War in terms of not so much like the horror elements of it, but it felt like it was going down that same trajectory. Like this could be a special franchise, especially for Xbox, being an Xbox exclusive at first. But then they just started making some poor decisions, I felt, as a studio, and that's ultimately what led it to its demise. As for what happened to the series, it's rather obvious. Ever since the release of the first game, the sequels didn't quite hit the mark in their gameplay and story departments, resulting in an underwhelming critical and commercial reception over and over again. As a result, the developer had to put an end to the series since the investment didn't bear any fruit. All that said, we do really hope to see the franchise return to the mainstream once again, but we can only wish for now. So, I'm going to put this out there. I mean, I absolutely want to see a Lost Planet 4 in the future, but I'm going to pitch something that would be very similar to what we've talked about on the YouTube channel when it came to Dead Space. Obviously we have to be, as a community, we have to echo Lost Planet 4 into existence. If we ever want this game to happen, we've got to be the ones that make it happen. But the first big thing, I think, the first big step would be to do something similar to what Dead Space did, and that is creating a Dead Space remake. Bringing the very first Lost Planet game that they know, that tried and true formula of the first game that sold millions of copies like that, they know that that was the most popular game. And so if they bring it back, make a remake for the first Lost Planet, it could really revitalize the Lost Planet franchise. Now, I don't think that they should bring back the second and the third one, especially the third one for sure, unless they do like a remaster or something of those two and they change little things about it, and then they launch Lost Planet 4. I know it seems like a long shot, but I would love to see Lost Planet 4 make a comeback, and I'm going to continue making content about it, guys, because I want to see Lost Planet 4 come back into the fray. Let me know, though, what do you guys think about Lost Planet, and do you think Lost Planet 4 could ever see the light of day? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And for more Lost Planet 4 content and videos, stay here with zrotv. So Days Gone is a title that, feels like it came out so long ago, and we've been waiting and waiting for a sequel to this game. And I've talked on the YouTube channel about Days Gone 2 and this game that many of us would love to see a continuation of this title, of this franchise, this IP. And I want to talk about, some of the things that we know, some of the more recent developments of Days Gone 2. Could we potentially see this game in the future? Let's talk about it, guys. So this is coming to us from the official Days Gone Wikipedia page. On April 9, 2021, Jason Schreier of Bloomberg News revealed Bend Studio had pitched a sequel to Days Gone, but that the first game's mixed critical reception and lengthy development process caused Sony to reject the proposal. Shortly afterward, Ross confirmed Days Gone 2 had been pitched to Sony, but that many of the details could not be confirmed due to a non-disclosure agreement. He revealed that part of the plan for the sequel was a shared universe with co-op play, which was not included in the original Days Gone due to staffing constraints. While appearing on a podcast with David Jaff, the creator of God of War franchise, Garvin said, "If you love a game, buy it at the full price," and implied Days Gone did not receive a sequel partly because it did not turn enough profit. Garvin came under fire for his comments. Commenters said Days Gone had already benefited from fan support during its release, and that it was unreasonable to ask someone to spend $70 on an unknown game. Others noted that Sony ultimately controls sales of PlayStation games and offers free demos, and the blame could not be placed entirely on the purchasers. Following Garvin's comments, Jensen thanked players for their support no matter when they had purchased or played it. So first of all, obviously, some of the stuff that I feel with what happened to Days Gone, some of it I think are a number of excuses. I feel that Sony not greenlighting it, saying that it was like a lengthy, it was a lengthy development process, but this is a title that sold multi-millions of copies and stuff. And so, I have a hard time believing that that was really the problem here. Maybe it was, from a marketing perspective and everything else, that might have been part of it. I think it was more some more internal issues that really could have hurt this, because when you start hearing about, talking about, paying full price for a game and things of that nature, I think if Days Gone 2 came out today, we would be more than happy to pay, the full price for it because, we've been asking for it for a long time. According to David Jaffe, then Chief Executive Officer of SIE Worldwide Studios, Sean Layden had vigorously supported Days Gone, but as soon as Layden left his role in September 2019, Jaffe said Days Gone was dead. Jaffe said that when trying to pitch a sequel, it was just an uphill battle the whole time, and Ross stated that Sony requested if Sony intellectual properties could be used instead, like Siphon Filter. Ross said the sequel would have explored a more technical direction among detailing other features. Ross claimed that the game had sold over 8 million copies, yet was treated as a disappointment by local studio management. This was in response to the announcement that Ghost of Tsushima, another SIE first-party game, had sold over 8 million copies. The sales numbers provided by Ross were disputed as they were based on a PlayStation Trophy data tracking site. Ross went on to say that at Bend Studio, he saw Days Gone sell over 5 million copies. The tracking site at the time suggested 5.8 million copies sold. So, he's saying, obviously, 8 million and 5.8, I mean, there's a pretty big discrepancy there, but even 5.8 million copies, that's a lot of copies sold for a brand new IP. And yes, Ghost of Tsushima, unbelievable game, guys, sold, over 8 million copies. It's awesome. And we're getting a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. We're going to be talking about that here on the show here. But I would have to say 5.8 million copies for a brand new IP is still very, very good. This is why it sounds like there were a lot of internal issues as a team. Even though Days Gone, I don't think was like the greatest zombie game ever made. There were a lot of really cool elements that they could have built off of from that first title. And it seems to me that, like I said, there were a lot of internal issues between the developer and then the publisher, that being Sony. It's going to be hard to say if we're ever going to get a Days Gone 2. I think that really what it's going to come down to, guys, is maybe Sony selling the IP to another, smaller third-party company, or, somebody, over at the team goes back to Sony and continues to pitch it and tries to mend those almost broken bridges, so to speak. It'll be really interesting, to say the least, what happens here in the future, but I'll keep you guys posted as we get more information about Days Gone 2. If you want Days Gone 2 to come out, it's going to be very important that we are vocal on social media about this to the developers and to the publishers, that being Sony, that we want to see this game come out. Let me know though, guys, do you want to see a Days Gone 2? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Days Gone 2 content and videos, stay here with zrotv. One of the most fascinating titles on PlayStation in terms of a PlayStation exclusive is Death Stranding. What an unbelievable story, guys. Absolutely loved the first game. And I want to talk, though, about the sequel that is coming, that being Death Stranding 2. Obviously, guys, being a massive Hideo Kojima fan, this was a title that when it released, it had so much mystery behind it, so many questions that you wanted to get answered. And so when you dove into the game, what an experience from a graphical perspective to a story perspective. Sure, there were issues along that journey of playing Death Stranding. We'll talk about that here, but I want to talk about Death Stranding 2, the things that they can build on from that first game. Let's talk about it. So, guys, in an article that is coming to us from Josh West of Games Radar, Death Stranding 2, the sequel to one of the best PS4 games ever, is on its way. Kojima Productions confirmed that a sequel is in the works at the Game Awards in 2022, with Hideo Kojima himself making the announcement and giving us our first look at the new project. The original Death Stranding was complex enough, and with the sequel still shrouded in a fair deal of mystery, it stands to reason that we have a lot of questions for Kojima already. We've known for some time that it's not slated to launch until 2024 or 2025, so naturally, you won't find it on our collection of new games for 2023. However, it's definitely one of the most anticipated upcoming PS5 games already. PC users might be in luck too, as it's not uncommon for PS5 exclusives to land on Steam or Epic Games platforms shortly after launch, although that, like many other aspects, remains to be seen in the case of Death Stranding 2. So here we go, guys. In terms of a release date, well, Kojima Productions is yet to confirm a Death Stranding 2 release date. The Game Awards 2022 teaser trailer set the tone for this new action-adventure game, but also made note that the name Death Stranding 2 is just a working title, so expect this game to be a little while off yet. That assumption is further supported by actor Norman Reedus, who spoke offhand about Death Stranding 2 back in May of 2022, where he confirmed in an interview that we just started the second one. All we're saying is don't expect to see Death Stranding 2 before 2024 at the earliest. Obviously, guys, I think it's very reasonable to expect that this is going to be a game that's going to be an exclusive to PlayStation for sure. Now, in terms of like what we saw from a trailer perspective, Kojima Productions revealed the first Death Stranding 2 trailer at the Game Awards in 2022. The 4-minute long teaser trailer didn't show any direct gameplay, but it did give us a sense of how the world and characters have changed since Sam Porter Bridges removed his cufflinks and severed his connection with the Bridges Corporation. Naturally, there's a lot to unpack in here, and Death Stranding 2 director Hideo Kojima teases that you've just seen the trailer and I've put a lot of things inside, so I want you to talk about it and find details in it, which is fascinating. I love that he does this, guys. He really almost tells a story within the trailers. It's really, really cool. Now, Death Stranding 2 will be powered by Decima, the proprietary game engine created by Guerrilla Games. The studio's engine is behind Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, and the original Death Stranding, and has helped set new benchmarks for visual fidelity and the implementation of high dynamic range lighting on PS4 and PS5. It has been confirmed that while Kojima Productions is leading development of Death Stranding 2, Guerrilla will support the studio for all things Decima. The performance capture seen in the Death Stranding 2 trailer was completed with assistance from the PlayStation Studios Visual Arts group, with the uncannily realistic digital humans powered by Epic Games' metahuman technology. Absolutely awesome, man. I cannot wait for this. Now, obviously, guys, from a graphical perspective, it was absolutely, breathtaking to watch, to just play this game that felt very, very cinematic in a number of ways, kind of unraveled the story, and it really begged you, like, a lot of questions even at the end of the game that you wanted to see, in terms of continuations of this franchise. And so I'm super excited to see kind of where they go with it. I think it's pretty reasonable to expect, though. We've got some new characters. We've also got some returning characters. Obviously, Norman Reedus, guys, is going to be coming in as Sam Porter Bridges. In terms of the Death Stranding 2 story, this is what's going to be really interesting. Should we have connected? That's the prevailing message of the first Death Stranding 2 trailer, and there's so many weird and wonderful things happening throughout its 4-minute runtime that you'll twist your mind in knots trying to figure it all out. We see what appears to be an older Sam Porter, a fully healed Fragile, and an extinction entity cult whose leader is wearing Amelie's necklace and haircut and hiding their face with Higgs's signature death mask. There's mention of a new private corporation, APAC, more overt nautical themes, and a potential Fragile Express replacement called Drawbridge, which incorporates both a rope and stick motif. There's also very real indications that we'll be dealing with multiple alternate realities connected via the beach, with potential variants of Sam Porter, BB, Lou, Fragile, and others to contend with. Let's be honest, we'll be unpicking all of this for months, if not years to come, and I 100% agree with that. But here's something we do know with 100% certainty. Hideo Kojima scrapped the entire story after the pandemic. Speaking at the Game Awards in 2022, the director and writer said this of the Death Stranding 2 story: I had the story written before the pandemic, but after experiencing the pandemic, I just rewrote the whole story from scratch. Kojima then added this comment with a smile, speaking to his uncanny ability to predict events through games like Metal Gear Solid 2 and Death Stranding. I also didn't want to predict any more futures, so I rewrote it. It's really unbelievable what Hideo Kojima has been able to do between, Metal Gear and then, of course, Death Stranding, what I would love to have seen in Silent Hills. He's done some incredible work. He could definitely be a storyteller in movies and all kinds of different mediums of entertainment. But we know, after the trailer, we know it's coming, right? We know like different things, and we're going to be unpacking a lot of that trailer over the coming next number of months, of course, guys. But that being said, there's still so much that we don't know. And there's so much, this story is shrouded with so much mystery. And I think there's going to be more mystery even in Death Stranding 2 than there was in the first one. It's going to be really fascinating, to say the least, guys, to see what happens here in Death Stranding 2. And I'll be sure to keep you guys posted as we get more information. Let me know what you guys think about Death Stranding 2 in the comment section down below. And for more Death Stranding 2 content and videos, stay here with zrotv. So Dead Drop is an upcoming game from Midnight Society, Dr. Disrespect's company, and I want to talk about, everything that we know so far about this title and the things that we've seen so far, guys. I'm super excited about this title. I really am. Anything that Dr. Disrespect is kind of working on behind the scenes, and especially when we saw the logo to when we started seeing gameplay, I'm really excited about it. I think it looks great, but information has somewhat been scarce though in terms of this title, and so I wanted to talk about everything that we know up to this point. When can we expect to get the full release and things of that nature? And is this going to be a COD killer? There's a lot of talk that this could very well be a game that's going to compete against the likes of Call of Duty, maybe even games like Battlefield. But I think Call of Duty is the one that everyone's trying to aim for at this point in time. So let's talk about it. So guys, in an article that's coming to us from Gen X, and that being Daniel Borges and Wessel Mini of Gen X, Dr. Disrespect is one of the most well-known gaming streamers on the internet. He is infamous for his character and his gameplay. Now he's attempting to jump into the gaming sphere by creating a video game, by creating a studio named Midnight Society. The game that Midnight Society is developing is known as Dead Drop. It is what they claim to be the first ever vertical extraction shooter. So when does the game release, and what can we expect from this game developed in partnership with Dr. Disrespect? So that being said, in terms of the release date speculation, so at the time of the writing, there is no official confirmed release date for Dead Drop, but you'll find all information that the developer shared, as well as some speculation from Gen X on when we could see it launch. So technically speaking, players can try out the game now. The game is available to those who have claimed the Founders Pass for the game to test out. There are only 10,000 Founder Pass holders for Dead Drop. The only way that other players can play Dead Drop at the moment is if a current founder decides to sell their Founders Pass on an open market like OpenSea. This is because the Founders Pass gives players access to unique call signs and visor cortex to sell or trade in an NFT market, which I find very, very fascinating for sure. But that being said, only 10,000 people at this point can actually play the game. So what about everybody else? Well, in terms of, as for now, the game is in the very early building stages right now. Some test maps are not even fully textured out for players, so there is no final release date for the game available at the moment. Because of how early in development the game is in, there are no major leaks to look at right now. As the development of the game continues, we will see more official releases from Midnight Society and hopefully more unofficial leaks as well. So one thing to look out for is who else will join Midnight Society as developer. The game is developed by major developers like Quinn Del Hoyo, who helped develop Halo Infinite. Robert Bowling also joins the studio, who is a creative lead of Call of Duty. It is definitely worth keeping an eye on who else will join Midnight Society to help develop the game, because it will give us a good idea of the direction of the game. We obviously have gotten gameplay guys from Dr. Disrespect, and a lot of that gameplay that we've seen from some of these big YouTubers and stuff. The game, definitely looks very much so pretty bare bones at this point in time, because they're still working on the game actively. And that being said, I'm really excited to see the full version of this as it slowly comes to fruition. I'm going to be giving you guys all of the updates and things of that nature as Dead Drop gets closer and closer to development. I think this could be something really special, guys, because when you have guys coming in from Halo that have worked on Halo, guys who have worked on Call of Duty, you have Dr. Disrespect who worked on Call of Duty maps, and he can kind of give you an idea of a direction for certain maps and things of that nature to be played for casual gamers, for competitive gamers. Could this eventually become the next esport? Could it be a Call of Duty competitor? I think it absolutely could be. I think we're still years away from it, fully launching to the public, but I think that they're playing their cards right when they're already playing the game and only 10,000 people can play it, so it feels very exclusive. Dr. Disrespect is showing it off, even though it's very, very new in terms of, and very bare bones. People already know about Dead Drop now. So as more information comes out and development furthers, they're going to be showing these things on Twitch. They're going to be showing it on YouTube. And that's going to be really special because it's going to build so much hype and excitement for the game, potentially unlike any other game ever brought out before it. And so very excited to see what this all looks like as it gets closer. A vertical extraction shooter, that's really fascinating to me as well. I can't wait to see where they go with this, guys. What do you all think about it, though? Let me know in the comment section down below about Dead Drop. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know, and let's have a real conversation about it. And for more Dead Drop content and videos, stay here with zrotv. For years upon years, and even to this day, there has been this massive narrative in the gaming community about, is there ever going to be a game that is a COD killer? Call of Duty, guys, being the biggest, most, renowned first-person shooter of our time, has been dominant in this space. And it really hasn't even been close. There's been other games that have, come out that are, certainly up there. And I'm not really talking necessarily about some of the free-to-play games like, Valorant or, even games like CSGO, which are massive in terms of viewership and things of that nature. But when we talk about a year-over-year basis, the amount of copies that are sold, things of that nature, Call of Duty stands alone. Now, there's been talk that there are a number of games that are coming out that are slowly but surely going to be creeping on Call of Duty. And one of them we just talked about, and that was Dead Drop, Dr. Disrespect's game, which is still years away, so it's hard to say, when that game's going to come out, but they're definitely building some hype and excitement around that game. And as more developments come out, they're going to continue streaming those things. And then when the game fully comes out, I think there's going to be so much excitement just from the community and from gamers alike that are going to at least try this game out. Well, there's another game that is going to be coming out by the name of X-Defiant. And we've gotten some, betas and things of that nature that people have been able to play it. And I got to tell you, out of all the games out there, Dead Drop seems like one that could definitely challenge Call of Duty in a number of ways. But X-Defiant is one I feel that could really also compete against Call of Duty in terms of numbers. Now, I say that though, but is it going to, are these games going to sell as many copies? We have, free to play elements. I mean, Dead Drop, we don't know all of the, all the elements and how that's all going to work. But when we talk about free to play versus paying, to purchase the game, or, you pay to play, Call of Duty, that's why it's just so powerful, because people will pay year over year to play Call of Duty and the new Call of Duty entries. And I will say that it's going to be very hard for me to say that either one of these games is going to be the COD killer, because we've been saying it for so long. So many people in the community have been saying, oh, this is going to be the COD killer. This is going to be the game that dethrones Call of Duty. And the reality of the matter is, when you look at the numbers on Twitch, Call of Duty is not as high as like CSGO or Valorant or some of these other FPS games. But when we talk about just how many people are playing it and how many copies it's selling year over year, there is nothing that is even close to Call of Duty from a first-person shooter perspective. And I think it's reasonable to expect that there's not going to be another game like that for a very long time. I do think that there will be, at some point, there's going to be increased competition as time goes. And when I say that, I mean that X-Defiant and Dead Drop, what they're going to do, potentially X-Defiant even more than Dead Drop, but definitely X-Defiant is the way that they're going to really tap into this whole thing is they're going to draw a lot of people away from Call of Duty, at least for a period of time, to try the game out. We saw it in the beta. We saw tons of Call of Duty, YouTubers to content creators and actual pro players that are playing in the CDL and stuff, play X Defiant. And so when I see that, could the numbers start shifting away from Call of Duty and going to X Defiant? I think it's reasonable to expect that some of that is going to happen, but it's all going to come down to the development team over there, over at Ubisoft, that are making X Defiant, to continue to create a roadmap that is going to be absolutely awesome and something that's compelling to the community at large, that you're going to come back to the experience over and over again. Because it's one thing to bring you to an experience one time or maybe for a week, but to bring you back to the experience over and over again, that's a totally different game. And so I think X Defiant, they've got a lot of work cut out for them if they want to be considered the COD killer. We've talked in the past a lot on the YouTube channel about different games that were, in different forms of development that were and games that have come out that could they be the COD killer? And every time it just has never happened. And I don't think that you could just completely kill Call of Duty. I do think that you could challenge the throne for sure. And I think that these games are going to do that. And I think there's going to be games in the future that continue to do that as well. So at least right now, I'm going to pump the brakes on thinking that, X Defiant and Dead Drop and, other games that are going to be coming out in the future are going to challenge Call of Duty from essentially taking over the FBS spot of being the largest, first-person shooter, on the planet. But I will say that I think with competition breeds greatness, because when you have so many other companies that are trying to chase you, it really makes the developers and the publishers realize that they've got to really get it together, and they have to put all their resource and development into making amazing games that are going to bring people back to their experience instead of going elsewhere. Because when you're on top, everybody's gunning for you. And so there's going to be a lot of that going on here in the future, I think, more now than ever, especially with Valorant that, coming out. And then, of course, CSGO 2 and a number of other games that are now coming out, like X Defiant, Dead Drop. I got to tell you, I don't think Call of Duty has to be worried yet, but they really, really need to start caring about what the community wants, instead of just trying to always listen to the casual gamer. You need to listen to a little bit of what everybody's saying. The casual community, the competitive community, every community matters when you talk about games of this magnitude. And so I just really think that Call of Duty, and I think it going now to Xbox, is going to be massive. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be huge for the future of the IP, because it's going to be some fresh eyeballs on this thing, and it could really go to new heights, especially right now when you have all these other companies that are coming for you. That being said, though, do you think X Defiant is a game that could be considered a COD killer? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And for more X Defiant content and videos, stay here with zrotv. So Snake Eater is back, guys. That being Metal Gear Solid is making a return. And I'm really excited about this because this is obviously a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake that's going to be coming out to the world to experience. And it's really cool because from a graphical perspective, we got a teaser trailer, and that teaser trailer was absolutely awesome. But, something that has been talked about quite a bit in the community is Kojima going to be a part of this? Because Hideo Kojima obviously broke ties with Konami, started his own company altogether, wanted nothing to do, obviously, with Konami anymore, and he severed those ties in a pretty bad way. He was planning on doing a Silent Hills title and things of that nature, and obviously, this really brings up the question, is he involved at all in development? So let's talk about it, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. So Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater was one of the biggest announcements from the recent PlayStation showcase, and IGN had the chance to speak to the team behind the game to learn more about exactly what this remake is. And by the way, guys, this is an article coming to us from IGN and Adam Bankhurst of the team over there. So while the team wasn't ready to reveal everything about Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, which doesn't currently have a release date, they were ready to talk a bit about if Hideo Kojima had any involvement in the project, if there will be more remakes from the Metal Gear series, and more. So here we go. One of the biggest questions many had after the announcement was whether Metal Gear Solid 3 director Hideo Kojima was involved in the project. There wasn't much hope that Kojima was going to be a part of the project, especially after his breakup with Konami, but it was a question nonetheless. We also asked if Yoji Shikanawa was involved, as he was integral in the art of the Metal Gear Solid series and is now working with Kojima at Kojima Productions. They are not involved, a Konami spokesperson said. However, the development team will work hard to create this remake and also the ports so that they can be enjoyed on multiple platforms by even more players all around the world. For those unfamiliar, the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 was announced alongside Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, and it includes the original Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, and Metal Gear 1 and 2. The collection will arrive the fall of this year. So who is working on the remake? As it turns out, the central role will be taken on by Konami developers who have been involved in the production of the past games in the Metal Gear series. These devs will be working with Virtuos, a studio who has also been involved in the production of previous entries in the Metal Gear series. This confirms earlier rumors that Virtuos, which has worked on everything from Dark Souls Remastered to Uncharted 4, was involved with the remake. We chose Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater because it depicts the birth of Big Boss, Naked Snake, which is the starting point of the Metal Gear series, a Konami spokesperson said. Another reason is that many fans have been requesting a remake of this game for a long time. So why did they decide Metal Gear Solid Delta over Metal Gear Solid 3? Well, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater is obviously a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, and we began by asking why they chose to go with the Delta symbol instead of just calling it Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater Remake or of something similar. Konami gave a brief explanation on Twitter about why it made this decision. The devs elaborate a little more in our chat. The Delta symbol was chosen because its meaning fits the concept of the remake project, a Konami spokesperson said. Delta is a character from the Greek alphabet that means change or difference in mathematics and variables, and also has the meaning of changing an amount without changing the structure, which is really, really interesting. And then there's that ending we said of the Metal Gear Solid 3 story, a gut punch of a conclusion to a story that retroactively sets the entire franchise in motion. Love, honor, betrayal, and all the best bits of Metal Gear Solid wrapped up in one beautifully camouflaged package. Recasting Snake in Metal Gear Solid Delta or Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Plane was one of the more controversial decisions of that game, but Konami isn't going to shake the boat in that department either, and has shared that all the characters' voices from the original game will be the same in the remake. As for whether this means that more Metal Gear Solid remakes are on the way, we just have to wait and see. Regarding remakes of previous games in the series other than Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, we will listen to player demand and consider accordingly. That's what Konami said. So, look, guys, here's the deal. Obviously, I'm not very surprised that Kojima is not a part of this project, but I will say I'm really excited about it. You know, I can say though that Metal Gear was never as I was never as big of a fan as some people are of this franchise. I think it's a very intriguing franchise. When Kojima was there, he created some fascinating stories. They are some fascinating stories for sure. I actually like his more recent Death Stranding more than any of the Metal Gear games. I just think the Death Stranding story is like a little more fascinating to me. But do I want this to exist? Absolutely, because I want Metal Gear to continue for the future. I think even though Kojima is not there anymore, I believe in Konami that they can put something good together. Now, more recently, they've come up with some, when it comes to Metal Gear, they've kind of had a shaky start, right? So hopefully this really puts them in the right direction for where to go in the future for the Metal Gear franchise. But I'm very excited for what Kojima is doing with Death Stranding 2. I'm excited for this, especially after the teaser trailer. I think that from a graphical perspective, I just think it looks great. I'm excited for it. I'm very, very excited for it. And I'll be sure to give you guys more information as it comes out, guys. Let me know what you all think about Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. What are your guys' thoughts about it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Metal Gear content and videos, stay here with zrotv. When we talk about a list of games that have some of the greatest comeback stories we've ever seen, that list is very, very short in my mind. Um, Guys, when we talk about games that start off very, very poorly, or they have very, very shaky launches with tons of bugs, glitches, things of that nature, and almost feel broken. And then over time, it just never gets better. The studio gives up on the title, and then they end up moving on to other IPs or other projects. This happens continuously in our industry. Well, that being said, there's a couple of games, and one that we're going to be talking about right here, that definitely have worked very hard to change that narrative. The first one was No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky started off very, very, poorly, lots of issues. I was very frustrated with it when I was playing the title, and because there was so much potential there. And the team over there continued to believe in the game. They kept updating, doing patches after patches to build this world to what they had envisioned it from the very beginning. And now, No Man's Sky, unbelievable. One of the greatest comeback stories ever in gaming history. I'm sure there's others, guys, but these are the two, at least in my mind. The second one is Cyberpunk 2077. This is a title that had so much hype, so much anticipation, so much pressure on CD Projekt Red. Coming off of the Witcher games, they we're coming out with a new IP altogether, something very new, something that could be, transcendent in a number of ways, and it launches early. They launched it early due to investor demand for wanting the game to come out quicker. They launched it too early, and what we got was a game that had so many issues. Even playing the game with all those issues, I saw underneath, and I know a lot of others out there, a lot of you out there saw something special there. CD Projekt Red had one of two things that they could have done. Number one, they could have just moved on to another IP, focused on The Witcher, left Cyberpunk 2077 there to die. Or number two is they could have said, you know what, we messed up. We shouldn't have launched it this early. Let's go ahead. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's start implementing patches, updates, things of that nature. Let's stick to a roadmap. Let's make this thing happen. And they did. And I will tell you that I commend them in a massive way, because Cyberpunk 2077 is an incredible game that, underneath all the crap in the beginning, there was something special. In Cyberpunk 2077, and the folks over at CD Projekt Red, they saw that and they pushed it forward. I believe, guys, that Cyberpunk 2077 is the greatest comeback story we have ever had in video game history. And I'll tell you why. No Man's Sky was a game that had, a lot of excitement about it. They were talking about how big this world was and all of that. But the difference between No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077 is one game was so highly anticipated, one of the most anticipated games of all time, that being Cyberpunk 2077. There was so much pressure on CD Projekt Red to deliver because of what they had done with the Witcher series. So much pressure, and yet they made a huge mistake releasing it early. Had all these bugs, all these glitches, especially when I was playing it on the Xbox. It was a disaster. But underneath all of it, I was like, man, this game, if they just didn't have all these bugs and glitches and stuff, it would be so amazing. And lo and behold, they believed in it, they pushed it forward, and now, guys, it is a absolute juggernaut of a game. And guess what? I think that as time goes, with future DLCs to the next game, if they ever decide to create another game, to a multiplayer experience, which they canceled, at least for the time being, to focus on the single player story, which I think was absolutely awesome. I think that they needed to pump the brakes on a multiplayer to focus on the single player story. Once that single player story is good to go, in terms of DLC and all of that, once all of that is solid and good to go, and they kind of get back to that whole roadmap, which I think they're at that point at this point in time, then I would say it's time for a multiplayer. it's time to continue building this thing because you invested so much into it and it started off so bad, and they kind of took on that adversity and they faced it and ran towards it. I mean, really, they did not run away from the adversity. They ran towards it, and look at where it is now. Unbelievable. And it just comes to show that those two titles are two titles that when you have a game and you believe in it and your community believes in it and you release it and it comes out shaky and there's a lot of issues at first, don't give up on your game. Keep on updating. Do what the community is telling you to do in terms of, hey, this is an issue, that's an issue, whatever it is. Put your team in place to a point where you're able to address the issues that come up, especially the more popular ones amongst fans. And if you do that and you build it you have that foundation and you continue building from there, you can make things unbelievable happen. And Cyberpunk 2077 is the greatest example of this that I could possibly give. The greatest comeback in video game history, in my personal opinion, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is the greatest video game comeback story ever? Do you think it was Cyberpunk 2077, No Man's Sky, or something else? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more Cyberpunk 2077 content and videos, stay here with zrotv. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.